Good day, everyone. I'm just here to present to you a quick briefing on South African cherries. We are not very big in cherries in South Africa, but I will give you a brief explanation of what is going on in the world of cherries. So, overview of cherry cultivation in South Africa. Looking at the distribution of cherries across the country, you will see that the majority of cherries in South Africa is produced in the Western Cape area, where 82% of the country's production is taking place. Um, there are some other areas in the country, Northwest, Limpopo, Gauteng, and the Free State, which were traditional cherry areas, especially the Free State. But the Western Cape, which is a fruit growing area in South Africa, has now become the biggest province in producing cherries throughout the country. So, looking at the varieties in South Africa, you will see that South Africa concentrates quite a lot on low chill, early producing varieties. A lot of them, and the majority of the plantings, will be your Zyger varieties, which will be Tioga, Hazel, Lynn. There's still some other earlier ripening varieties. Lappens is one of the big ones in there, Royal Dawn. And then we get to all the others, which are more later producing, like Royal Edie. And majority of these varieties are also planted in the Western Cape area. Zyger as a low chill variety has been selected in South Africa and been cultivated over the last 20 years when they introduced the Mini Royal and Royal Lee and Royal Dawn range, which then produced into the Hazels and Tiogas and Lins later on. And they have stayed the low chill option or the early harvesting option for us because with them, they are the early harvesting varieties. South Africa has not invested a lot into Brooks. It came into the country quite later on. And the same with Royal Dawn. Is two varieties which are predominantly planted in Chile as early ripening varieties, but in South Africa, those two have not been extensively planted due to Brooks being not that rain tolerant as some of the other varieties. And I think South Africans, especially in the Western Cape area, and even where we produce in the northern parts, we have some early rainfall, and in the Cape, they'll have some late rainfall. And that's why Brooks is not selected as one of the promising varieties for production in South Africa. The new IFG range with the low chill varieties has also been introduced into the country. These is more on trial basis. There's not been a lot of development into these varieties. Some growers have planted it quite extensively, but we are still sight unseen on these varieties, and we know them from traveling around with IFG and seeing what it looks like in the rest of the world. But currently, these variety splits in South Africa mainly focus on the early ripening Zyger varieties. On the harvest windows in South Africa, there's a small amount of cherries that start being harvested in week 38 or week 39, which will be late September varieties. We will then get into the second and third week of October when some of the volume jumps will come. But predominantly South Africa is a late November, early December variety window. A southern hemisphere country like Argentina and Chile, the majority of our harvest takes place or production takes place from November all the way to December. We've got a small amount of cherries which are being harvested after the new year. And I think some of those that are showing on the chart are something that's been stored. But we don't have quite a late season. There hasn't been a lot of development into late varieties. But I think South Africa is moving a bit more to the edges of the graph, and we're trying to get more early ripening varieties and more late ripening varieties to see if we can utilize the opportunities in those windows. The history of cherry production in South Africa. Cherry production in South Africa started very early. Cherries were introduced quite in the early 1900s. There was already cherries in South Africa, but really production started in the late 90s and early 2000s, where cherries were starting to be more commercially produced. The areas where these cherries were produced was the Free State area, a very high chilling area where some of the old Heidelfingers, Bings, and varieties like that was produced. Only when we moved into the era where some of the Zyger varieties were becoming available, 2004, 2005, around those areas, is where predominantly the shift moved to the Western Cape area, where predominantly most of our cherries are now produced. The harvest window of that area is starting early November, which then carries them all the way through to December. Good elevation changes in that area where we can basically go from an early to a late season cherry. The Western Cape is also traditionally now our cherry area or cherry predominant cherry province of the country because of its chilling requirements. There's some good chilling availability. There's good chilling availability in the Western Cape, especially at altitude, where we can grow some of their higher, more productive varieties. A few interesting facts about cherries. Cherries in South Africa, we have a unique climate, climate advantages. We've got a tropical area of the country, and we've got a more winter rainfall, which is the Western Cape. So we've got a good spread of low chill, early ripening varieties to high chill varieties, and that is also in our altitudes. Cherries in South Africa are grown at altitude. Our cherries are grown at almost 5,000 feet. So there's quite a lot of altitude and evaluation changes as you go through the country. This is an advantage for us. Low pesticide use, especially in the north of South Africa. We are quite early in producing stone fruit in the country. There's not a lot of stone fruit in this area, so the pesticide demand for South African cherries is quite low, and this also makes it attractive to customers around the world. Agricultural practices in South Africa. Cherries for us, there's a lot of different training techniques. As you guys would know, South Africa is still young in cherries, so we have approximately 700 hectares of cherries in the country, and we produce roughly about 3,000 tons of fruit through the season. So orchard management and tree trainings, there's a lot of different ways that people are training: central spindle, V-trellis. We have not invested very high in Spanish bush or some of those KGB systems. But for us, tree training currently in South Africa, majority central leader training. People are diverting into the other training systems to see what works for them. But currently it's more on a trial basis due to our industry being so young and still so small. Tree training goes a long way for us, especially in the north. Apical dominance of cherries is quite predominant with us, so angles of branches need to be manipulated quite aggressively. And this is something that puts some high cost on orchard management. Pesticides and the disease management. We do not have as many pests and disease as other people on cherries. We also don't have a lot of chemicals registered currently because we are still a minority crop in the country, which we are working towards to get more of these chemicals into the country to be registered. But currently, pest and disease management for cherries in South Africa is fairly straightforward, and there's not a lot of threat from the outside. Water management, seeing that South Africa is a water scarce country, water management is a very good practice or a very important practice for us. A lot of farmers are moving away from the microjet sprinklers into drip irrigation systems, pump houses and water systems being automated, where fertilizers are being put through the water system due fertigation, so that we can optimize the water use as we go along. Mulching and composting comes a long way for us. South Africa, if I can say, is renowned for having good soil structure. We have good soil scientists, if I can put it that way, in the country, which advise us on soil health, soil biodiversity, as something that we cherish. And I think that that gives us a good quality of fruit due to our good soil maintenance, our good water efficiency. Our technology is being introduced into drip systems, watering monitoring systems that we put in place to make sure that these orchards are kept at the optimal conditions for production. Economic importance of cherries. The domestic market of South Africa is still kind of small. There's not a lot of people eating cherries due to the small window that we have. We only got 2 months of cherries. It's not a product that is vastly available on the supermarket shelf. This is changing. I think more people in South Africa are eating cherries. More people around the world are eating cherries. So there is a good, how can I say, market in South Africa for cherries, but we are striving to export more fruit as the production increases. Other base products like jams, juices is something that we have not invested in quite as much. It's something that's still being on the small scale of things. Export markets, key destinations for us are Europe and Middle East. We have some challenges into accessing some of these markets due to phyto requirements, getting permits for importation, pest management, and then also the global shipping doesn't really help us. The opportunities we're on centrally based. We are close to these destinations. We have early access to Europe and to Asia. So I think that going forward, we play a good role in these markets. Employment of farm labor in South Africa is quite good. I think cherries has the opportunity to invest more in labor. I think we are an area where we can develop our labor and we can help improve the employment of people in South Africa due to the high demand. Challenges and opportunities. Challenges in South Africa. If we talk about climate impact and climate change, we all know the climate's changing. We in South Africa are seeing that as well. We're having more severe storms, more colder winters, more severe winter patterns coming through. But on the other hand, we are having drier spells. And I think the rest of the world is seeing the same factor where things are just coming a bit more severe. That is our climate change. Pest and disease affecting yield. We have been fortunate enough to not be having SWD in the country for many years, but SWD has entered South Africa and is another threat for us in production areas, and we need to manage this as good as we can. Competition with other cherry producing countries. Southern Hemisphere, we've got Chile, large producer. Argentina produces cherries. We're all in the same window. I think we're all striving to put a good product on the market, and that is basically our producing countries that will affect us when we try to access these markets. Opportunities. Organic and sustainable farming is a practice that we do across the board. All producers of fruit in South Africa do the mulch. We do composting. Soil is quite important to us. Water sustainability is quite important to us due to the scarcity there is. And it's something that I think the South African farmer works well with. We like working the soil. We like producing in South Africa. And I think the environment is something we work with and not something that we try to work against. Expansion into new markets, we see it as an opportunity. There's a lot of markets that South Africa can still expand into. I think there's a lot of development in cherries. If we look at guys like Chile, they have a large volume of fruit and they still get good prices and are able to sell their product into the world market. Development of cherry for tourism. The South Africa local economy is quite large on tourism. I think cherries in South Africa, cherry festival farm tours is something people don't really do too much of in South Africa. And I think there is an opportunity for some of the growers to get a benefit of doing cherry festivals or farm tours. Future outlook. South Africa's future outlook. Research and development, new cherry variety suitable for South African conditions is trialed on a yearly basis. We've got a lot of IP guys putting new varieties into the country, as do other areas around the world. And then technology advancement in farming and farming practices. We see a lot of AI starting to be used in pest management, in the horticultural practice side, and also then on the irrigation side, a lot of technological advances there. Market trends, increase of the demand of cherries globally. We see that China keeps asking for more, even though the Chile produces more. The market is still quite open for cherries, especially if you look to the early side of November, late October, and then basically on the other side, there's a lot of growth opportunities and potential for us to get into the market. So in short, we don't have a lot of hectares. We are still a small country producing cherries. I think we are growing as the varieties are coming into the country, which are more suitable to the growing areas. We have some varieties which can help us increase more into the October window, and there's some varieties that can help South Africa produce more cherries into the January window. We try to produce a good quality cherry of box of cherries. I think South Africa has the opportunity to be a big role player in the cherry industry in the world. But we are still young, we are willing to learn, and we are willing to share our story. So I think, Thomas, to answer that, I think it's a bit more all down to the varieties. We've seen that certain varieties react well to the low chilling side of things, and that we've sort of like seen by trial and error is that certain varieties do accommodate the low chill well, where others do not. I think the low chill areas of South Africa are not producing the tons per hectare or the crop loads that we will generally see from higher chill areas, which is the typical thing you would see with lack of chill. We see delayed defoliation. We see a unwillingness of the tree to go into dormancy due to the low chilling areas or low chilling availability. Factors, Dormax plays a large role for us in rest breaking cherries in these areas. I think pollination is something that we can improve on. Pollination is quite important when it comes to these areas, seeing to the daytime temperatures being so high, humidity being so low. So we try to manipulate those things, but I think the best that we can say is variety specific. We try to look for varieties which acclimate to the low chilling areas better than others. There are not a lot of those varieties, and most of them are currently in the Zyger range, which are the Tiogas, the Hazels, the Linds, which are the early ripening varieties. But some of them we even see struggling in these areas, and especially in a year where there's low chill. We don't see the crop loads which we see in other countries. But typically South Africa, in these areas which we predominantly call low chill areas, we have good chill during the night. So nighttime temperatures are low, and we accumulate a high amount of hours below 7.2, if I can put it in that way. But as soon as we go to the dynamic model or chill portions, we see that we do not accumulate chill as much as other countries because of our daily temperatures. The daytime temperatures in these areas are still quite high. And I think what makes it work for us, and like I'm not a scientist, so we haven't really understand the term dormancy of cherries to an extent where we can determine exactly how this long nights of good chill followed by warm days affect the cherries. Because other growing regions have a stable temperature of 10 or 12 degrees Celsius, and that creates chill. Or they have a warmer climate where it's always 18 degrees during the winter. Night and day differs with 5 to 10 degrees. Whereas night and day can differ with up to 20 degrees. We have nighttime temperature of 3 degrees or 0 degrees, but we go up to daytime temperatures of 23 degrees. So I'm of the opinion we still get the chill during the night. We lose some of it during the day, but we're not sure how much. Dynamic model tells us that we are losing, but how much are we losing? We are not entirely sure of. So if we look at these areas, we can say easily, I can produce 700 hours below 7.2. But if I look at my chill portions, I'm not even getting close to 45 chill portions. So there's a bit of a contrast there to other growing regions like Chile or California, where they get to the 50 chill portions, but their hours below 7.2 match hours. We do look at that, and we see the trend that from us to go from bud break to bloom, we've got very high growing degree days. So compared to other sites where growing degree days take some time to get to their 5,000 or 2,000, which is required, we accumulate that in quite a short window. And for us, that doesn't help us during the bloom period because we've got very little time to go from 10% bloom to full bloom because of the high daytime temperatures. And I think we are finding that how can I bud fertility, because maybe lack of lack of chill, is not as great as when we go into regions where there is higher winter chilling hours. The tree comes out of dormancy quite easily, where it's sort of in the low chill areas, we force it out of dormancy, if that makes any sense. We do apply bud breakers, which in South Africa it's Dormax, is still widely applied, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I think the whole industry applies Dormax in South Africa. Without that, we struggle to get cherries out of dormancy. I think that is the main risks of producing cherries in South Africa for us at this moment is rain and climate change. We feel that the rain window is moving and shifting along a bit. We are looking for varieties which are less susceptible to rain cracking, and we are looking for varieties that has less chilling requirements. We're trying to find lower chill. And then also limitations on having cross-pollination. If we can have more self-fertile varieties, that will help us. But that's sort of the talk amongst all breeders. I don't want it to crack. I don't want it to double. And I want something self-fertile. That is what everyone really wants, but it's difficult to put those all into one package. Rain and harvest time in the northern side of South Africa, I would say we can easily get 30 to 50 millimeters of rain during the harvest period. We have rain covers. Like Chile has also after the past season has invested more in rain cover protection. We have done the same due to the high amounts of rain. And then good drainage. Orchard drainages are set up in a way to drain water away from the root zone as quickly as possible. And that's basically how we try to mitigate the rain cracking. So traditionally in South Africa, sorry, that is something I did not speak to in the presentation, but traditionally in South Africa, the older orchards are all planted on Mahale, Pontelap or Santa Lucia. And then basically for the last 8 years, South Africa has been moving majority into Maxima 14. And now we are seeing some growers going into Maxima 60. So the Maxima varieties with Mahaleb is three of the most predominant varieties of rootstock that is being used in South Africa. We have Colt, we have Mazet, we have Kiesler. We have those, but because of the size of the industry, those rootstocks have not been investigated or trialed as much as these old varieties of rootstock that have been in the industry for years, and we are trying just to use them to move forward. I think as time goes on, we will transition into different varieties of rootstock as they come along. But between the Mahaleb and Maxima varieties of rootstock, those are the predominant ones being used in South Africa. I think it's a general known that Maxima 14 is a rootstock which is supposed to be a bit more dwarfened. It doesn't bear overcrop load of fruit as well. So oversetting varieties or self-fertile varieties like maybe Lapins and Antioga, even Hazel or Lin, when it gets a good pollination, can overset on Maxima 14, when Maxima 14 can then not mature the fruit and give you as good fruit quality as, let's say, a Maxima 60, a Mahaleb or a Mazet, which is capable of carrying a larger crop load and having still good quality of fruit. That is the main thing. I think Mahaleb is also a lot of Phytophthora prone, a lot of disease prone in the Mahaleb variety we find in South Africa, where Maxima 14 and Maxima 60 has some tolerance to some of these Phytophthora and can I put it, issues that we have. So that's the reason why I think we've moved away from Mahaleb. And then also Maxima 60 and Maxima 14 in South Africa is produced through tissue culture. So the rootstocks are made to tissue culture, and this gives us the opportunity to increase the numbers quite quickly. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share the South African cherry industry with you guys. Hope the day goes well for the rest of you, and good luck for the upcoming cherry season. Thank you very much.